Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sikich Live. You might have been at ERP Bootcamp this morning, so you're seeing me once again, but don't worry, we're back here with our regularly scheduled lives each Tuesday and Thursday, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock p.m. Central Time and Thursdays at 2:30 Central Time. Thanks for being here. We are talking all about the manufacturing industry. The last Thursday of every month on these Sikich Lives is all about manufacturing. So if you're in this industry, make sure to mark your calendars for that end of the month here at 2:30 Central Time. Everett Boss, a technical fellow here at Sikich, working within the Microsoft Dynamics 365 team at Sikich, is our first time guest on Sikich Live. But before we get to him, I would be remiss not to mention for you to like and subscribe to these channels, to all the channels that you're looking at, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, and you'll be able to get notifications about when we go live. We like to bring new and exciting topics each week about ERP, IT managed services, security, customer relationship management software, and so much more. Also, don't be shy. When you're in the live and you are in our chat, make sure you're asking questions. That's why we're here. That's why we're live. We want to be able to answer as many of your questions as possible. Okay, so let's bring Everett on. Hey, Everett, how are you? Welcome to Sikich Live.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, thanks so much for coming. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yes, I've been doing ERP implementations in the United States since 1995, and almost all of the companies were manufacturing companies, and then the most of that were engineer to order. IEM, industrial equipment companies. So as a company, Sikich, I worked since 2012. I've done a lot of experience with this more complex form of manufacturing. And I look forward to this little discussion with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for answering my questions I have for you. So, we always have lots of questions about the manufacturing industry and trends within the industry. There's so much between the technology that they use to the processes and operations at these companies. So I think you bring a nice mix of both that operational knowledge as well as that technical knowledge. So what do you see in manufacturing companies with regards to planning, MRP? Any changes there?
Yes, a gradual change, quite interesting. If you go back to maybe 20 years ago, I implemented manufacturing companies, and the heart of ERP is still the MRP program, where you explode my bill of material and I get all my purchased and planned orders, planned production, planned purchase orders that I have to act on as a planner buyer. And once a week, that was running MRP once a week was not that strange in the beginning of my consulting career. Stability of the planners and the buyers, they want to work from a fixed list. And if I run MRP too often, then it changes all the time, and I just didn't want to deal with that. Really interesting when you look at it now, it's a completely different picture. The planners and the buyers, they want to know as soon as possible if there's new demand or change demand in the system. So the MRP frequency has gone up. Of course, more than 15 years, I think everybody runs MRP once a night. But my projects, the last 3-4 years, the customer made it very clear that is not enough. We are missing things. We are missing sales orders for spare parts. So there's two critical factors that drove that to the higher MRP frequency. And that is one, the spare parts, where you have unpredictable sales and you have to act quickly, because very often if customers have a big equipment that is not running, that is an expensive interruption. So they are placing an order for spare parts, and you don't want to know until the next day, as MRP has run at night, to realize you have to build the spare part. Many spare parts are very expensive in the IEM industry, a few $1,000s, and they are not just sitting on the shelf. They have to make them. The second reason is just in general the changes that you deal with in engineering, engineer to order, bill of materials. There's design changes, and you don't want to know until tomorrow. That is not good enough. So the last projects I was doing, MRP runs twice a day, lunchtime MRP and at night. And clearly there are signs and customers discussing and say, we want MRP to really run all day long. And technically those things are becoming more and more possible. Well, yeah, that is a very interesting trend. The acceleration that we see in the business in general, no surprise, it leads to an acceleration of my replanning capabilities. I want to instantly, if possible, know what is changing in my company when the demand is changing.
And so, what about on the shop floor for the workers? What kind of trends are you seeing there?
That is a very different type of trend. Of course, we always had special data entry screens for the software workers, and of course, they want minimal exposure with an ERP system. They want to do their work, but of course, we have to do time and attendance. Especially in the IEM industry, we have to know what are the actual hours we are spending on building this whole thing, because many of the things we haven't built before, we have a budget, we want to stay within budget. So tracking actual labor on the floor is super important. It has to be super easy. We see the technology trend, to make it much more easy for the shop floor workers to clock in, we call it, say, I'm working on this job, click, and then go and do the job.
Right.
But more interesting is the work instructions. I grew up in the beginning of my career with work instructions being a few words in the routing card that was printed, and then you could read, okay, this is what I have to do. And then a drawing was printed separately, a big engineering drawing, and then the people would know what to do. Now we have integrated work instructions that are online, because the cloud, everything on the cloud, the work instructions are also centrally maintained online with some special tool. There are drawings, there are 3D models they can instantly see. That is a huge step forward. The high-level instructions for the workers to reduce the risk for errors. And the latest is introduce even mixed reality. Microsoft is working on that right now. That the workers can have a mixed reality experience, not just for field service, where we already have it a little longer, but also on a manufacturing floor.
So like HoloLens.
Yes, I'm guided by an expertise work instruction system, not just reading some lyrics on a piece of paper. That is a very interesting trend, and that is accelerating.
And is there the trends that you're seeing on the shop floor? Microsoft Dynamics has that solution, but is there an integration with that HoloLens into Dynamics 365? How does that all weave together?
Well, this week is Ignite Week, and these things were just announced. So we haven't seen it in action yet, but it is technically possible. The first customers are experimenting with this. You have to imagine it like this. You have your very efficiently designed shop floor screen where the worker has big buttons and he can scan his badge and he's in. And then there's another button on the side that says, okay, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm starting to weld something. Okay. Then there's a big barcode you can scan, and then the work instructions with mixed reality are coming up instantly while you have your HoloLens. That is just being demonstrated right now.
That is just a really neat thing that Microsoft has put a lot of R&D into, and I just...
Yeah, a lot, yeah, and it fits the companies, like the company that I work in right now. They have highly complex robots they assemble. That is not an easy instruction. You can have a manual and turn pages. It is very clunky to work that way. You got to have instant, direct guidance where somebody points you to where to do something, and that is really, for the high-tech industry with complex equipment, is a lifesaver, this type of work instructions.
So where does the industrial Internet of Things come into all of this?
Well, that is coming directly into higher uptime for your own equipment. That's one thing. And of course, monitoring what you sold to the customer, your customer equipment. And if we start there, then we have always in the IEM space a big field service operation. That is not a choice. That is a necessity. You cannot survive as an IEM company without field service. The customer has bought a complex piece of equipment that you designed with their input. Now it's running. Something goes wrong. Who can they call? Only you. They can nowhere else. There's no generic help service you can call. So the field service is critical, and there we have to be able to prevent breakdowns. As the customer runs their factory with our equipment, it's critical within the Internet of Things that we have advanced knowledge of something that is possibly going to break down. The field service technology is now completely has this IoT embedded, so you can see the customer's equipment, and you can monitor if something is maybe getting in a danger zone. You can already get a field service guy there before it breaks down and have the right spare part. That is a big trend, and that is for our IEM customers a huge service thing. It's really much better service. That, of course, you can always repair something that breaks, but now you can see it coming, and the customer is saving a day of waiting where they cannot do their thing because the system is down. That is a huge thing. But it also goes inward. Many companies look very much inward, their own equipment. IEM companies have huge machines, very expensive machines, laser cutters, all kinds of expensive cutting equipment that has to run all day.
Yeah.
The same thing you can do for yourself. And Microsoft now recently, very interesting, has applied the same technology they used for the field service. You can also use that for yourself because it's really the same thing. It's just you own it, and in the other side, the customer owns it, but the same technology is applicable. So that is a very accelerating trend that
it's all about using the ERP technology, Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations in this instance, to be proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, much more real time, that you know exactly what's going on. You can look at your computer screen. You don't have to walk down anywhere. You can just sit behind you. You see exactly what's going on. That is indeed a big trend. Not just IEM, but IEM has a special interest because there's so much money involved in that big equipment.
Right. So yeah, and so I want to talk about that a little bit. IEM companies, they sell really big equipment. Is there a trend you're seeing that's unique to this vertical regarding how they sell these?
There is indeed. Well, the selling has always been a big effort. There's a lot of engineering going on. Engineers talks to engineers, so it can never be quick. But it's more about the selling process. It results in a different type of ownership. You see the same trend in the consumer world. The millennials, they are less interested in owning something. They just want the service. Now imagine you have to buy a big equipment for $2.5 million to keep your factory running. Customers are starting to wonder, and it's also very much a financial thing, talking to your IEM and the bank. Can I maybe just pay you for the service and then you keep owning it? So that is selling equipment not as a hardware, but selling equipment as a service, which becomes almost much closer to consulting in a way, because you have a big contract, what that service entails. Of course, the uptime now becomes really critical because I remain responsible for the uptime and not the customer because he doesn't own it anymore. That is a very interesting and very logical trend that has been spreading around in society everywhere, and it just has had to get to the equipment. That's what we see beginning. And the software, of course, needs to be able to address that. Very different functionality. If you don't ship hardware, but you keep owning it, and you get a monthly subscription income. Very interesting trend. Sikich is trying to be on top of that trend, and we are working on it right now to be able to support customers that are going this direction.
Yeah. So why do there's a lot of ERPs out there, right? There's a lot of operational type software, especially for manufacturing companies. Why do you believe Dynamics 365 is the way to go for manufacturing companies?
I guess the listening tools, how do you call that? The way Microsoft has organized itself, and it took a while, but now they have gotten really very sensitive that they are picking up on the signs in the market, what customers need, what customers complain about. It can be a small thing. There is this database, it's called Ideas, which is used intensively by consultants, by customers, and we have seen the last 5 years an acceleration of those ideas being seriously considered and included in the next release, because the next release, every 3 months we have new features coming out. There is an amazing acceleration with that, an amazing increase in quality of the software overall, because the small things that customers always complain about are being fixed, and big new features that people have been wanting for a long time are now showing up. There must be a big budget that Microsoft has for all this, because I have been amazed lately how many big things are suddenly becoming available at a high pace. That is really the last 5 years, I have to say. Yeah.
So I have one more question for you. When we talk about IEM specifically, engineering and production, they have to work really closely together.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The change, well, it's always been an Achilles heel. And of course, sometimes, and that doesn't happen much anymore, but in the older days, we came to a customer that was engineered to order, and the engineers had their own system, and they were okay. And the operations people had their ERP system, and there was no connection between the two. There was a full-time person maybe making sure that the engineers finished the bill of material, it was typed into ERP. And when there's a change, then we do repeat. So not connected. That is now harder to find situations like that. Integration between engineering and operations is kind of the standard, but it's getting closer because the increased tempo and the diversity of demand. Customers want all kinds of things that are not so easy to organize, not from the catalog. That is, of course, in IEM has always been the case, but they want it faster. So engineers and operations cannot wait and say, okay, engineers, give me your new design and we'll work on it tomorrow. It has to be constant real-time interaction. That means that has a big impact on our ERP system. Engineers have to be able to look into the ERP system and say, okay, what's going on there? Are the parts I designed already on an order? Yes or no? If they are, I have to be watching out, changing it because the buyers already are buying it. And the other way around, that people in the operations, that is from planners and buyers, obviously, but also people that do the receiving. Very interesting that if you are receiving products in an IEM company, you need access to engineering data sometimes because you have never seen this thing. It's a new part number for a specific customer. How big is it? Is it 10 yards? Is it 10 inches? We got to know before the truck comes in. And that is so fascinating that we see the technology ERP allows that you can have those bigger integrated systems where you can see everything, what used to be across the wall, engineering. Well, nobody would ever know what's going on there if you work in warehouse receiving, but now they do. One click, you see the drawing, you see the dimensions, and you know what to get ready for when the truck pulls up. That to me very exciting, and it's all about how closer you work together, how better the result for the customer. Because I cannot tell you how many times I've seen customers making a small mistake in engineering, you catch it next week, so you're losing a week before it's being fixed. Because we always fix everything, but it is critical to have instant interaction. So that is a big trend we can see for years. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Everett, thank you so much. I don't have any more questions for you. Thanks for being on Sikich Live this week.
Okay, you're very welcome.
We appreciate it. We'll hope we have you back sometime soon. If you'd like more information about what Everett's talked about today, including blogs, videos, case studies, all that fun stuff, please feel free to visit www.sikich.com to learn more. It should be right there. Thanks so much for joining. Like I said, like and subscribe to get notifications for when we go live each Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays at 1, Thursdays at 2:30 Central Time. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.